Hi everyone, I'm Anthony O'Flynn. Welcome back to the channel. I'm coming to you from the Sunshine Coast here in Australia, and I'll be giving you an energetic update and a forecast for the year 2020 and beyond. Basically the whole of the decade, the 20s. So it's been quite a profound decade, the one we're seeing an end to this month, and we'll be moving into 2020. And we also obviously have the solstice, the summer solstice here in Australia. I've made a separate video on that, which you can also watch. Some of the themes will be replicated and expanded on in this video. And of course, we're moving into a new decade, which, although the Gregorian calendar is a very inaccurate way of calculating time, it's still in the collective subconscious a significant temporal marker as we move into the new decade, new year as well. And people are looking for some change, some new way of being, some sort of turning a new leaf, all those sorts of things, particularly the fact that it is a new decade. This year, 2019, has gone by so quickly, it's quite remarkable. The acceleration of time that we're experiencing, even if it's subjectively, is profound, and really people are finding they just can't get done everything they'd like to do in a day. I know that it definitely applies to me. So I'm really going to give you some energetic updates and an overview from my perspective on how I see things moving forward. I'm labeling the next decade, the 20s, the decade of convergence. This theme of convergence is going to be one of the big ones that play out across the next decade. And by this, I'm referring to the converging of the light and the dark. And although the light and the dark are not necessarily coming into tension in this way, it's more that the light will be amplified, which will become more apparent and will give this polarity, this clear polarity between the light and dark. And this is going to cause in itself a lot of tension for people, and I'll explain why. Because it really will be a case of energy flows where attention goes the next decade. Because if we put our attention on all the ills of the world, all the problems that are unfolding or at least coming to light, the ones particularly that have been hidden, some of them for millennia, the control system, the matrix grid, all these sorts of things, then that's what we're going to experience. Is this sort of doomer vibe with the world's ending and everything's bad, there's all these earth changes, social problems, all this kind of thing. Sure, they're there and they will intensify moving into the decade, and that's what I'm referring to as a convergence, because we are at a stage now of this paradigm shift where it is actually necessary for all of these problems to become amplified, to clear out the karma, to perceive the reality for what it is, to uncover the darkness, and to be comfortable with that, to know that we've lived through a period of what's referred to in the Indian tradition as the Kali Yuga, the age of darkness, the Iron Age, as we move into this age of light, or Satya Yuga as it's referred to, the golden age of man, Satya meaning truth, the age of truth, which means there will be this intense polarity playing out both on the collective and individually as we actually start to embody our weaknesses, our limitations, our shadow, and start to really be comfortable with the journey of evolution, knowing that it's not just a light and love parade. So, this new age snowflake, unicorn and rainbow way of dealing with evolution is really going to come unstuck in the next decade, because it's simply not giving people results. And it really is a case of not a really profound way of evolving, of personal development, of spiritual evolution, all these things, of growth, because it really lacks this integration with the shadow, which is going to be essential, because we're going to be seeing the collective shadow become very, very clear on our screens, on our laptops, our phones, and everything. Even in the mainstream media are having to report these things, because some of these stories are just becoming bigger and bigger and involving royalty, banking elite, all these sort of themes. And my goodness me, this next decade is only going to intensify. So this phrase, energy flows where attention goes, will be one to keep in mind as we move into the next decade, because at the same time we're going to see massive influx of light energy, a massive influx of light, because that's what's occurring in the subtle world. And as I've noted in previous videos, the subtle reality needs to change before the physical reality. The physical reality will be the last plane of existence to change. So my tip here is not to focus on the doom as it's playing out in the physical world. I don't also subscribe to the idea of burying your head in the sand and just focusing on the positive, which that's a very limiting way of navigating the shift as well. And inevitably, in the end, that we will all have to focus on our limitations and so on, because that's exactly what's needed to move through to live in a more exalted, elevated way of being, in a true harmony. And so we can see as the disharmony amplifies, or perceived amplifies on the planet, at the same time the harmony in the subtle reality is amplifying exponentially, really. It will come to in the next decade. There have been big activations across 2019. There are more to come, and the activations are becoming stronger, lasting for longer, like longer duration and deeper. So the second theme, which will be very relevant for all of us moving forward into the next decade, is, simply put, giving yourself permission to change. I can't tell you or put in words how important it is to let the old version of you let go of that, to amplify the newer, more exalted, elevated state of being in the new version of you. And then that will become outdated, exactly as we have all this technology that becomes obsolete today, that you will step through the next decades many different versions of yourself as you connect to a higher and higher vibration, more pure, more embodied, more wise, ultimately, more evolved way of being. But where we're at now is that this decade has been, for many people, depending where they are on the journey, is really coming to terms with the perception of the shadow and the unconscious behavior that we're all manifesting, and then working with that, and then stepping forward into a new version of ourselves. So giving yourself permission to change is key, and no one can do that but you. No guru or perceived guru, which is another thing that's going to be under the microscope in the next decade, is this idea of the guru and the need for the guru, because really the Aquarian age really embodies the idea of having this inner knowing. The verb for the Aquarius is I know, and that's moving away from the Piscean age, where the verb for the Pisces is I believe. So we're moving from a time of faith-based ideas, religion being faith-based, to knowing, having this knowing, which is the Aquarian age. So when Pluto moves into Aquarius through the 2023, 2024 period, that will signal a massive change in the collective. That this Pluto, because it's a transpersonal planet, an outer planet, will affect the collective in this way, where the real aspects of the Aquarian age will start to manifest. It's already started. We can already see the signs of that clearly, but it will intensify more and more as we go into this next decade of the 20s, which it'll be quite profound, because I feel that if I'm still doing these videos on the 30s for forecast for the 30s, that in 2029 we'll be having a radically different conversation. I mean, some of these things in regards to disclosure, official disclosure, and UFO research is really starting to become more and more widespread in the sense that people's belief systems are firstly changing around ETs, UFOs, and not only do they exist, but the questioning now, there isn't the fear that there used to be of these beings, that there is much more an acceptance that there is intelligent life in the universe. And from all the research that I've done, that this, at least different beings are saying they're waiting for us to catch up, to create the space, the environment where they can actually come and have open contact, and we're actually the ones that's preventing that at this stage. So we can see things like in 2019 that the US Navy has officially admitted some of the videos that they have, some of the footage are unidentified flying objects. They have clearly admitted the existence of UFOs, which is a major step forward. I mean, this is probably one of the biggest steps forward in disclosure that we've actually seen. There are other markers, other indicators, but the actual admission by the Navy of this footage that's been shown and admitted publicly in the mainstream media that it is actually UFOs is a major step forward. And we won't necessarily go through this shift from A to Z in one go. And that's what many people are mistaking, to think that this process is just like a light switch on off. It's a process that we're all undergoing. We're all undergoing this intense transformation. We're all undergoing this journey of awakening. And it's a beautiful journey if we have the eyes to see it like that. And I feel like the conversation that I see, at least in the awakening community a lot of the time, is quite negative in the terms of the awakening, as far as all these ascension symptoms that are just generally negative. And my perspective is not like that. I think that the more we can connect to these states of joy, which are starting to bubble up spontaneously now, more able to connect with this joy of the heart and really live that, embody that, then the easier the process will be. I appreciate entirely that the process of awakening is a roller coaster. Sometimes there's things coming up for us, particularly like this idea of flashbacks to years previously, and perhaps like lower states of mind or lower states of being, things that we've done and haven't been the best version of ourselves, as a way of processing that and integrating that. But the way is ultimately forward. So this is important to embody both the light and the dark, but at the same time, the conversation is quite often steered towards the negative things, that there is this ascension symptoms being negative. Well, some of the things that have started to pop up for me, at least, are very positive in the awakening process, and I've started to notice this spontaneous, what I'm referring to as a conscious astral projection, that is occurring spontaneously and is basically a separation of the astral body from the physical and the etheric body. Now, when we astrally travel at night, which we all do, like in a dream state, the physical body obviously stays where we're sleeping, and so does the etheric body, which is the first energetic body, the etheric body or the pranic body. But it's the astral body that moves, that goes and visits the different planes. Well, I've noticed that this is starting to occur spontaneously while I'm awake. But it occurs very quickly, and it's not stable, it's chaotic. It can happen and then it will stop. But this, from my point of view, is the beginning that we're becoming consciously multidimensional. That this multidimensional journey is not just words, not theory, not concepts. And this will be one of the most important things for the awakening that we will actually start to see, is the embodied awakening. Because at the moment, the conversation is really, it's very mentally orientated, it's very concept orientated, it's very theoretical. But in the next decade, we'll start to see embodied awakening. And many people are still at the point of, oh, well, what do I get out of this awakening? What's in it for me with this ascension? And this is a very limited perspective on the journey of the heart, of the journey of being of service, and of the journey of giving. And this is why the awakening process needs to be embodied at a much deeper level, where we can actually live this, not think it, but live it. Be this awakened being, be in this exalted state, this elevated state, this pure state. And that's why the connection to Vishuddha chakra will become very, very, very significant next decade. It's a little bit flying under the radar in the conversation in the awakening community at the moment, but this relationship to the throat chakra, Vishuddha chakra, in Sanskrit, will become a huge part, because it is our connection to the multidimensional aspect of us that is experiencing time and space from a non-linear perspective, and not locked down into one place from the perspective of space. So we're moving from this linear time frame to this more true experience of time, past, present, and future, in a single moment, a single duration. And this is why the practice of presence or mindfulness is so important in this preparation for this, because the thinking itself is also linear. The thoughts are actually occurring in this linear process of time. Oh, this is what I was thinking 10 seconds ago. This is what I'm thinking now. And we need to disconnect from that linear experience to come into a state of presence where there is no time. There is simply pure consciousness, pure being, pure awareness, the eternal now. Connected to the eternal now moment simultaneously. This is going to become very, very important theme moving into the decade for the real spiritual things. The heart palpitations of the awakening of the heart and the symbiotic relationship with the earth will continue. And people will go through this at different stages depending where they are on the awakening journey. So I think it's very important to introduce this into the conversation, that there's no judgment around the speed of someone's awakening. We would not look at a flower that bloomed later than the other flowers in the garden bed as being any worse or any better than the other flowers. It's just a different time frame of blooming, and yet the flower still blooms, and the flower has the same beauty as the other flowers in the garden. So this introduction of the ego, the relationship with, particularly in this case with the spiritual ego, will become more, the conversation will become stronger around this, because it is pretty much inevitable that people on spiritual path, awakening journey, will at times, particularly unaware of, will develop a spiritual ego or have aspects of being egotistical on the spiritual journey. And this is not a video for this conversation. I'll make one of these in the future, but it is a more sophisticated understanding of the ego itself and also the spiritual path. And you will find that people who have been doing this for a long time have many, many insights into the nature, not just of the ego, but of spiritual egoism, which is a more refined way of the ego, but it's still this idea of the ego wanting to be better, wanting to be superior than others. And it's even prevalent in the spiritual path. And it's something that is not spoken about frequently enough to support and mentor people through this process, because the moment that you consider yourself to be superior or better than other people, you actually are playing into the eternal trap of the ego, this kind of intensification of the ego, rather than moving away from the ego into this state of being. And that's why the heart is such an important doorway to connect us into this more elevated state, because the heart embodies all the beautiful qualities of humbleness, of self-abnegation, of selflessness, of forgiveness, of compassion, of self-love, of self-acceptance, all these beautiful qualities, which helps, if we like, soften the tension of the ego, or soften the grip the ego has on our way of being. Perhaps not entirely the right words, but you get the point that this is going to become a very, very strong theme moving into the next decade. The heart palpitations as well is but basically part of the awakening process. Mother Earth Gaia is going through the awakening process at the same time. So it's a symbiotic relationship, Earth equals heart, that we are connected. We are connected to the planet, and our awakening is reflected in the planet's awakening, and our inner turmoil is reflected in the planet's turmoil with the earth changes, which they will intensify. This is also something that will be part of the shift. People incarnating on the planet at this time knew before they incarnated this was not going to be an easy process, and that's why the qualities of resilience need to be developed in all of us to navigate the shift with ease and grace, and to basically work with the circumstances and the changes. And that's why one of the greatest themes as well, I don't know how many I've covered now, I don't have didn't listen with numbers, for this next decade will be instability. Instability will be a big theme, and many people consider instability to be a negative, but it's actually not, because the more unstable things become, the more it will allow change to occur, and the changes that will come as we move into the new paradigm will be beneficial. So this status quo that has kind of locked everything down with the banking system and with the two-party government system and with the corporations and the lobby groups influencing the corporate groups, and many of these themes that simply control resources, control power, and keep the human beings in a slave-like way of being, which is confronting, but it's the truth of life on this planet, will loosen. And it will loosen through chaos and through this instability. And through the chaos, there will be an attempted new order, in the sense that the elite will use the instability to appear to come up with a solution for various things, new currency, whether it's cryptocurrency or something, who knows. But they will come up with a solution, but the solution is not the real solution. But the instability will open the doorway for new solutions, new systems, new structures, and all of these things which we need in order to really move out of the old paradigm and this systems of control which humanity has lived under for eons. So welcome the instability. It will be difficult, particularly the economic crisis that is impending. It will be much bigger than the GFC, the 2008 global financial crisis. This is not financial advice in any way. We will have a housing crash here in Australia. It seems that people just don't study history, and if you look at Ireland, it took 6 years basically, including dead cat bounces, for the property market to actually reach its bottom, with some property prices going down as much as 80%, which is staggering. Yet here in Australia, we have some of the highest debt levels in the world, and even now there's over 1 million Australians in mortgage stress. So this will be very, very difficult times for people who are in that particular situation. But really, it's necessary, because at the current paradigm, housing is unaffordable, and we need some crisis to open things up, to change, to make way for a new system, a new way of doing things, and a more fair, equitable distribution of resources ultimately. And this is going to be a big theme as well moving forwards. The economic reset, economic restructuring, it's one of the big things, one of the big pillars of our life. The financial institutions, all these things, they will become under increased scrutiny and will be distrusted more by the general public. The same with the government. Many of the crises happening with the bushfires here in Australia, it simply serves as a catalyst for awakening, because more and more people see the mismanagement of our resources, the inability for the government to create good solutions, and this will see more and more awakening, at least at the level of the power structure, going into the more spiritual dimension of things. There's different levels of the awakening as I classify it, but this will be more, at least at this level, the awakening is completely baked in the cake for the next decade. It is going to be incredible to watch people becoming much more involved in activism, in protest marches, in engaging in the democratic process. That is simply going to be something that is going to go massively big in the next decade. It will be quite profound. People that you wouldn't have even thought are going to start getting engaged in various social, economic, political, environment issues, and having their voice heard, and they will be insistent about it. It won't be something really tame, like just liking a post on social media. You're going to see people taking to the streets. It's already started in Hong Kong, in Chile, and other countries around the world. France with the Yellow Vest movement. I don't see this going anything but the foot going straight on the gas with this, particularly with the Pluton-Saturn conjunction in early 2020. We've also got later on in 2020 the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Other people in the ascension community are expecting a radical ascension, if you want to use that word, the next few months. I don't see that happening yet. I can't make any forecasts out in the next few months beyond that, beyond the equinox. But at this point in time, I don't see that occurring at all. A lot of people are still preempting some of these paranormal things with the awakening too early, in my view. I don't feel that things actually going forward into the next decade will become very, very clear until after 2025. This second half of the decade is when, at the moment, where I feel things will start to become extremely rapid in terms of as the spiritual awakening, when things go into the spiritual dimension of the shift. So new vibration is being anchored as how I see things in the last 1 or 2 weeks. I can't even put that in words. There's something occurring in the astral universe where I feel like that there is some new vibration that's coming in, that's been anchored, that's like permanent basically. It's not necessarily the end of the darkness or something like that, but the awakening has gone to a level where things have stabilized, where things have solidified with the light coming in, the light frequencies, and things will start to show in time from that. I mean, it's a long journey. It's a gradual process that we're going through with this, but I feel that something has happened just this month. Basically, there is something being anchored that is permanent, but it's not the end. It's simply a stage of this process. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. You're going to see a lot of people waking up next decade. People are going to go through all kinds of existential crisis with what they're doing here. They're going to want more out of life. Different values will shift. What am I doing here? What's my purpose? And you're going to see a lot of people come online, particularly with the activism in the first part of the decade. And then other people will come on board with wanting to live a higher vibration life, better quality diet, practicing meditation, mindfulness, quitting jobs that are just basically serving their their income and everything, not getting anything out of it personally, no fulfillment. There will be people changing with that as well, and there will be leaders emerging in the next decade in the awakening community. The first stage, if you want to think of it as a rocket taking off, it's done its job. It's been very good. We've gone through a massive awakening collectively in this decade. It's been phenomenal, really, where we've come from 2010 to where we are here today in December 2019. But yes, it's going to see a lot of other people get this wake-up call, and it'll be fascinating to watch them and see what they're going to do and what they're going to contribute and what gifts they have to share. I can see this being really massive, and particularly a lot of people with the mental health crisis being taken much more seriously and start to question, well, what is happiness? What is fulfillment? What is important in life? And how do I want to live my life? And what do I stand for? This is going to be some big themes coming through in the next decade, and we've already seen some of these things start. It's not as if a lot of these things will start on January the 1st, 2020. They've already started, but we'll see that amplify and expand more going forward. So we will see a lot of other things as well that I wouldn't have even thought of, I think, by the end of this decade. I think we're going to be quite surprised. It's going to be fantastic. And remember that we are participating in the shift, we are creating the shift, we are observing this shift, and it is a real gift to be here, and it's important to acknowledge that and have this gratitude each and every day for the fact that we are basically living in these epic times. It's a profound moment to be living on this planet, and I wish each and every one of you the best for the new year and also moving into the next decade. There's other things that I've forgotten to mention in this forecast, and I'm sure that there'll be things that take us by surprise and other things that feel like it's taking too long. But the process of awakening is a process, and we're doing it at an individual and a collective level, and it's important to be optimistic, stay on the positive vibration, and allow the process to unfold, and enjoy and celebrate this journey of awakening as we live more and more through our heart and embody these qualities, live these qualities, and live as an exalted, elevated human through this profound time of awakening. So thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel. You're welcome to share this video if you got something out of it, if you think it will help other people. And Happy New Year, everyone. Have a wonderful 2020.